So here's another question that I've often wondered. Artists of any caliber or background or medium, do they have a responsibility in society to be a source of education for the public when it comes to what art is? Do we play a role in actively defining it, or are we simply, for lack of a better term, a projection that they can willfully reinterpret and define, or should we be more proactive in how we are perceived?
Yes. No elaboration, just yes. No.
Damn, dude, that's deep.
I mean, if you're trying to sound smart, you can throw in a question like that. No, that is really good though. I do think that creatives, artists, storytellers do have kind of a responsibility to impart knowledge, but I can't really define what that knowledge would be. Like if it's not necessarily explaining to you what your art is about,
right,
or anything like that. But I do think if you're creating something, someone, and not everyone, but someone should be able to take something from that, learn something from it. And it doesn't mean you are actively explaining things or showing your techniques or things like that.
Right.
But you can, and I think at the same time, people should be responsible enough to take the opportunity to learn from it. Whether, again, you're teaching or educating with your craft or your stories or whatever, I think that responsibility goes both ways. But yeah, to go with more your question, I do think that we have a responsibility, and I think a lot of people are really good about that, whether they're doing it on purpose or not, because we see a lot of in progress videos and stuff, like a lot of the stuff that you've described seeing on TikTok and that I've seen on Instagram are folks like as drawing and their techniques and how they color. I watched so many videos on using Copics, Copic markers, their process and everything, and I take that as education. It's entertaining at the same time because I love watching that. It's cathartic, and I'm watching and I'm learning and I'm seeing techniques and I'm seeing things that I do that validates the fact that I have this technique of my own. That's not my own, but something that I and that I see something else that I don't think really works very well, but that's me. If it works for them, that's fine. And then seeing something new that I think, I'm going to try this. I think there is that responsibility, and I think that's wise because we can, not just for people to learn from other people's works, but that we can learn and do from other people's works, like how to make our own better or how to do something that we may not have known what to do. And I think that is important, and I do think that whether it's active education or just something that we put out there and someone can learn from it on their own, I think I do think that there's a responsibility there, but it's on both the part of the creator and the person who buys from the creator or the fan or whatever, however we want to define our audience or our clientele.
I like that because if we're being completely honest, what I took from that was there is a shared responsibility.
Yes.
That it's applying a worthwhile and very evident value to the act of art. It reminds me of, there was a ceramicist that I had studied under in college who said that a good or a bad reaction to art is fine. It's no reaction.
Yep, exactly. But I definitely think there's something about those that don't necessarily, or at least don't necessarily explain their art. So like we just lost one of the best abstract artists in the world with, David Lynch.
Yeah.
And he's famous for, if you ask him meaning in, his stories, like, what is this truly about? Like, what do these things, what does the blue box and the key and Mulholland Drive represent? Like, what was that supposed to be for? And he was just like, I don't know. I feel like that's one of those movies that is brilliant, and it gives you just enough to think you can figure out what the deal is, but those clues are just there. They're all red herrings. But yeah, I mean, if you look for explanation in it and then you get it, it's like, what what from there?
Right.
So,
Right. Well, that's one of the reasons why I've always loved open-ended movies. You know, that the more ambiguous something is, except I think that, unfortunately, in popular media, doesn't matter the genre.
Mm-hmm.
You have to have a happy ending. It has to, if not happy, it has to be closed. It has to be, and then they rode off into the sunset.
Yeah.
And that fits a certain paradigm of appreciation within films, right?
Mm-hmm.
I mean, that is literally how Indiana Jones and the Last Crusade ends. And I love that. That to me, that was like, that's it. That's the end. We know the story. We're done. We got more. Didn't really expect them. But I'm not always a fan of people expanding on a universe and going, well, so you know that person you saw in there for 2 seconds? Here's a whole movie or a show about them. Because I'm like, but I didn't need to know that. I kind of liked that he was in the background. And maybe it's just that people expect more out of it because, you know, the movie houses, particularly the production houses, want, you know, an IP, a tentpole franchise now.
Yeah.
And there's a lot more involved with it.
Mm-hmm.
You know, they're trying to connect the dots. Maybe what I'm looking for is smart enough, because I was going to say brave enough, but smart enough to do that, to exactly leave red herrings, or to leave something unexpected enough in there that you just go, oh, you know, then that works. It's what, like, even though like it's kind of a trope movie now, I loved the Blair Witch Project. I love that. When it came out,
Yeah.
that was so early on the internet.
Mm-hmm.
I remember how people wanted the case reopened. Like there were people having real reaction stuff, and because the marketing was done so well,
Yeah.
we will never see that again. Ever.
Mm-mm.
Ever. I still have my VHS copy of the extended cut of it. And
wow.
I remember getting that and like how people were buying it, trying to find extra clues and stuff. And then when they realized, oh, it's a movie, because it was done so well in that regard. But like today, the eye of scrutiny would be on that so bad.
Yeah.
So
A little bit. I remember seeing it, and I knew at the time that it was just a movie, but it's like, how much of it is, I mean, obviously they have their story and everything, and these are actors, but how much of that is just the movie, and how much of it was like happening in, you know, reality, like on screen, like how much of that was just improvised, and you know, were they really scared at this point, or whatever, things like that. It was an experience, and it was amazing. And I remember my friend who we were watching that with, he was like muttering under his breath, "Don't show the credits. Don't show the credits."
Oh my God.
The cast and crew, they will not be mad, but don't run the credits and ruin this. They did.
Yeah.
And it's like,
yeah.
so I could tell he was slightly disappointed, but we were still like very much on a high after watching
Jesus.
that.
Yeah.
And it was opening night, so no one knew anything about it at the time. So there was no spoilers or anything. But yeah, it was an amazing experience that we won't have like that again.
No, because even the sequel didn't hold up.
Oh no, it was bad.
Yeah.
It was real bad.
Yeah. I own it, but I was like, I watched it one time. I can barely remember it. I was like, you kind of schlocked it up. You know, identified with the Blair Witch. I just, everything about it, just, you went from being what was a psychological thriller, you know, with such a that whole found footage aspect. It wrote it so well, and then you went full baloney. Yeah. And that just, I get it, right? But see, that's the other thing too. And like, you're right. I hadn't really thought about that, but had there been no credits at the end of it, but I'm certain the Motion Picture Association was more than likely like, no, this is union rules, SAG, we gotta, but maybe just leave it dark. And then after 3 to 4 minutes, then let the credits roll. Anything like that. I get it, you know?
Yeah. I mean, and, you know, documentaries and those kind of films have credits. So
they do.
You can totally like maybe do something like that where you don't necessarily have the cast of characters, just like list the names of the people who are in the movie, and leave it at that.
Oh yeah.
So there could have been ways around it.
Yeah.
But yeah, you're probably right. Studios and
I just, consider it this way. How many times have you and I either worked with somebody who was just like, no, that's my job title. And there are people that will literally go to fist fights in that copy room over like, you know, so if you have people that are that agitated over like something that's not even like printed on a placard anymore, but it's just in your email signature. Yeah. Somebody's going to get mad at the end of a credit thing, even back in the
Yeah, I get that.
Unfortunately. And I'm not even trying to be like copacetic about it or anything. I'm just like, I feel so stupid even thinking about that. But like, you're right. That's now I'm not going to think, if you're still in touch with that friend, that was brilliant. Like, tell him from me, that was brilliant.
Haven't seen him. Apparently he's in Hawaii. I think he's an actor.
Oh,
no.
Up.
So, but yeah.
May he get rid of some credits over there too.
I hope so.
Mr. Bill Suspense, goddammit. Oh my God, Blair Witch. That's such a great thing. Okay. So that's a good segue into this next part, because these were the more fun things. So there are a couple questions here that are just more kind of short ones, I think, but because we're rounding it out toward the end. This first one of my favorites, which is, what is your favorite dinosaur or dinosaurs?
Stegosaurus.
Okay. Just that one?
Growing up, it was Allosaurus, because
that's an interesting one.
Well, he was basically a T-Rex, but without the notoriety. Yeah. And I appreciated that. He was low-key T-Rex. I felt T-Rex was a little arrogant, a little big for his britches, this whole king of the lizards thing. But yeah. I like the Allosaurus because he was basically the same thing.
Yeah.
And then he just kind of faded out. But he was probably my favorite growing up. But then I grew to really appreciate Stegosaurus.
Yeah.
I just thought he looked cool.
He did.
I was super disappointed that he was not in Jurassic Park, but super jazzed when we got the ones in Lost World. Yeah. Say what you will about that movie, there were some really awesome things.
Oh yeah. Yeah.
So I do love Stegosaurus. I have a plush one that I built at T-Rex Cat.
Oh my God.
That was the thing when it first came out. We went and ate, and I built one. My wife built a Triceratops.
Oh my God.
Which is also one of my favorites. We still have them.
Oh, I am super jealous about that.
Yeah.
I always think to myself, like, it's interesting, like, what people pick as that. So, question, do you know what the spikes are actually called on the end of a Stegosaurus? It's a weird word.
I did at one point, but because I definitely read a lot of dino books from the library as a kid, but I could not tell you now.
It's a thagomizer.
That's awesome.
Right? I did not know that word until earlier this year.
And now I'm not entirely sure that I did know that specifically. Because I feel like I would remember that.
Yeah. That actually sounds like a late 90s sci-fi movie with like Van Damme in it.
Oh, yeah.
You know?
The Thagomizer. Oh, man.
That screams for a comic book to be made from that, man. Like some sort of like almost an Arnie movie, almost, but like almost with a Roger Corman flick aspect to it. You know, just like that low budget, like filmed in a warehouse with a guy that vaguely looks like Van Damme or Sly.
Yeah,
you know, Stallone, something like that. Yeah,
I like it.
Yeah, oh my God, that I feel like that would have been the perfect late '80s schlock fest.
Maybe it happened and we don't know it.
That is true. I do like Roger Corman films, and I know that he filmed a lot of stuff like that. And like that dude, and he was the one that did that first Fantastic Four, right?
Yes, which is the third best Fantastic Four movie, in my opinion.
Yeah, no, I tend to agree with that. Going on with popular culture, what is, if you would think about this for a second, what is the current show or movie that you've seen in the last 2 to 3 years that you would absolutely 100% recommend to anyone?
From the last few years,
last 2 to 3 years, yeah.
Do rewatches count? Because I can definitely tell you I've rewatched some things.
Yeah,
sure. Much older.
Yeah, no, anything. Well, there's a reason why. Like if it sticks with you and then you like it, you know, that's fair.
I mean, my go-to one is one that I rewatched in its entirety last year, and we have talked about it, which is Gravity Falls. One of my top 5 favorite shows, regardless of format, animation, whatever. One of my favorite shows. I would absolutely recommend that. Watching it from the beginning and sticking with it, because you think it's a certain type of show, and it's just funny and kid jokes and some adult humor that goes over the kids' heads.
Yeah.
But it is that, and it stays that, but it adds so much more to it.
Yeah.
And so much deeper and darker and weirder and just wonderful. And I try to rewatch it every couple of years, at least. And even last year, like there were entire episodes that I didn't remember just because I'd only seen them, a couple times before. But absolutely just love it.
Yeah.
It's still so good.
I agree with you on that one. I was late to that. That I was late to that fandom. I can't believe I missed that much online discourse about it. I mean, I've gone back to like old message boards and other posts and things, and like the theorizing between season 1 and season 2, the whole worldwide like hunt they did afterward when they were looking for the giant cement bill, cipher, and just all of it, like just missing out on that community. This kind of goes back to what I was talking about earlier with the whole community thing, watching that blossom and happen, and even the virality and vitality that the fans still have for it, myself included. I'm like always like, I still secretly hope there's a third season. I know there's never going to be. I know that, right? But there's a part of me that's like, I kind of want that. But do I? Because it ended so damn good.
Yeah, it's one of those that I'm okay. Like I was super sad when I found out it was ending because I did manage to. I got kind of like it had been on for at least a few months. Before I got into it, but I was still able to get in kind of before the Renaissance happened, and so I was definitely sad when I found out it was ending. But it's like it wasn't canceled; it's ending because the story's over, and I'm always okay with that. Another show that just ended that I feel opposite about is Star Trek Lower Decks.
Oh man,
which I just watched. Like I started watching it a couple years ago. Like it just had 5 seasons. But I didn't watch it until fairly recently, and I watched it all, and just it's so good. It looks like Family Guy in space, but it's not. It's actually good.
Yeah,
unlike what Family Guy in space would be. But they're 5 seasons, 10 episodes, all like 20 some minutes.
Yep.
It's like we need more of this.
Yeah.
Like this is easily. Like most Star Trek series had at least 7 seasons. Well, not at least, but they had 7 seasons.
Except for the first one, yeah.
Yeah. But like 20, even up to 30 episodes.
Right.
Hour long.
Right.
It's like we're getting a fraction of that. And it's still just, it was so good and they went out on top. There was maybe one or 2 episodes out of 50 that were mediocre that I wouldn't necessarily want to rewatch. But they weren't bad.
Yeah.
And that's rare for a show to not have a single bad episode in it.
Yeah.
But it still could have gone on longer. Like I said it should have 6 seasons and a movie, which would only be an extra 10 episodes plus a movie, but it fits that community, meme. #6 seasons.
I think that's something that I'm seeing much more of a paradigm happening. It just in general, there's actually a much more specific question kind of coming to this, but I lament the fact that there are shows that happens with. One of the ones I'd really gotten into recently was Inside Job, and
I watched the first episode. I didn't finish it just because I think it had just gotten canceled, and I'm like, I don't want to get into this.
Yeah,
but I feel like I would enjoy that.
I will tell you this: it is still completely worth it.
Okay,
the ending is very David Lynch, in my opinion. In the fact that it leaves you with some finality, some closure, but some other things that will make you even more mad at Netflix.
Yeah.
But I'm glad it's there. And there was a lot that could have happened. I think you can even derive, this is at least in my opinion, I'm certain there are other much more diehard fans that would argue this. There are clearly prompts to it in the opening sequences that there was far more that they already had planned because it was in the intro sequences. And even in their marketing, if you looked at some of the different illustrations they had done for promoting the show, I always felt like there was more that they just weren't letting on. And it was the closest, it also felt like an adult Gravity Falls.
Right. Because it was, Alex Hirsch was who created Gravity Falls, was involved in it.
He was a producer, and I think one of the writers from Gravity Falls. I can't remember her name. That was her show. I remember when she announced that on Twitter that it was over. I was like, oh, crap. Because I was on the last episode when I saw the post.
Oh,
And I was like,
no.
are you kidding me? So yeah, that one. But then, there's, do you ever watch the YouTube channel Retro Blasting?
I'm familiar with it, but I can't say I have.
Well, the guy that runs it, Michael, did a really good episode specifically about it's okay for stories to end. He specifically talked about how like the longevity of a character can be called into question when you start to question too much about who they are. Pop culture characters exist successfully because you have an attachment, but you have an attachment to an aspect of them.
Mm-hmm.
Once you begin to add extra baggage and extra characters and extra things and keep telling more of the story, the mythos goes away. And I think sometimes that's a quandary that we face today, because now it's not even that a story gets to end. There's always been the low ratings thing. But now if something isn't working, some executive somewhere is like, it didn't do the numbers we wanted. Well, what are those numbers? Nobody's really even privy to that. Okay, so in the world of literature and comics, do you have any absolute standout favorites that you would recommend as well? Or maybe are, things that you absolutely want to go back and reread from time to time?
Yeah, definitely. There's a reason why there are so many books on my bookshelf I have not finished, because I'm reading same ones over and over again.
God, I know that.
Yeah, some that I've wanted to revisit, like Jurassic Park. It's one of my favorite books. I've only read it once all the way through, and I still have a copy of it because I'll always have a copy of that. But it's taken a long time for me to want to reread that, even though in the back of my mind I always do, but I just haven't. So that will stay on my shelf, and I will read it eventually again. But it's one of those that I know, even having just read it once, I know I love it, and I'll want to revisit. There's a young adult fantasy series called The Girl at Midnight by Melissa Gray. I've read the first book probably 3 times. I've read the entire trilogy once, but that's always a kind of a weird comfort book for me, because it's one of the few books that I've read that you can tell the inspiration, but there are so many unique concepts, and the writing has such fun personality. Like, it is so well written, but it's written by someone who's literally writing in their own voice and with their own sarcasm.
Wow, yeah.
And it's so engaging, and I love reading that, because it's not, even great writers will have, like, they're narrating things in a way that's very mundane and like, all right, this is kind of dull, let's get to the good stuff. Even the dull stuff was good just because it had so much personality to it.
Oh, man.
So I always, like I said, I've read the first one 3 times, and they're really good. Very, very obscure, and I only even picked it up because she was promoting it on Twitter, and I followed her because she was also a writer at IGN. She wrote comic book reviews.
Oh, wow.
So I was following all of the writers who would work on comics, because they were very fun. And
that's incredible.
But yeah.
Oh my God, that's cool. I'd not heard of them before. That's incredible. Is there any one video game that you absolutely love? What is it? And when was the last time you played it? And did you finish it?
Oh, that is very loaded. First, there are so many that are like coming to me, but the first one that really strikes me is Super Mario World, which was that was the first game for the Super NES, which is a console that I technically did not own until I was like 18 or 19, and I got one from a friend.
Oh, cool.
But I borrowed one from a cousin, and for like a few months, and I would go over to people's houses and play it. So I never had my own growing up.
I gotcha. Okay.
But that was just a game that I always gravitated towards, because I grew up with Mario and Mario 3.
Yeah.
Not just throwing your name out there for fun, but that's just one that I always had fun with, and I never had to finish it. I have a couple times.
Yeah.
It's been a long time since I have, but it's just one that it's a comfort game to me. I like to play it even for just a little while.
Oh yeah.
And then stop. I played a little bit of it last year because I still have my Super Nintendo. It's hooked up right now.
I will give you a little bit of background on my experience with that. I do love that game, but I think I've told you this before. Being named Mario, I stayed as far away from those games as I could.
Makes sense.
It was just one of those things. I was always a Sega kid. That was just my thing. And I like the black consoles, all that other stuff. But honestly, I have to give it props. I did finish it. I think that game, well, my brother got a Super Mario Brother game and the Super Nintendo for his birthday, I think.
Mm-hmm.
And he played the hell out of it. And then I finally sat down and played it, and I was hooked. I genuinely believe that game is as close to perfect as any platformer I've ever played. The map design, the way it was put together, the secrets,
Yeah.
all of that is...
Are you referring to the first game, like the original? Or
No, Super Mario World.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay, gotcha.
Sorry. I think I said Super Mario Brothers. Yeah. Super Mario Brothers World blew my mind. I couldn't get over the fact that you didn't have to go through a linear thing. And I remember he had already lost the directions. So I didn't know anything. I started a brand new game.
Yeah.
Because you know how there's the 3 game saves?
Yep.
I didn't want to overwrite his because I know he would have probably like, what are you messing my game up for? So I started, and I was blown away that the overworld map looked like that. It kind of reminded me of Super Mario Brothers 3, but it felt so organic and I'm like, I can go anywhere.
Yeah, it was, 3, you didn't have to go, you could branch off here and there from the map, but you still had to get to the same end.
Correct.
With the other one, it's a lot more open-ended.
Yeah. Well, dude, when I found out that the red spots meant that there was more than one exit, I still remember that day, because I think I can't remember which world it is, but it's a subterranean.
Mm-hmm.
And it has, because it's that cliff overlooking the lake, and you get to the one and you hit it, and then all of a sudden it goes through the water and goes up onto the cliffside to that pipe. And that messed with, I'm like, oh my God, there's more hidden stuff in this game. Because I couldn't figure out, I had gotten pretty close to finishing it, but I was still sitting at 56% finish. I'm like, what am I missing? I'm almost to the end.
Yep.
But I really underestimated what they did with that game. And I even remember for a while, there were people, I remember somebody at school saying, no, you can technically finish it at 115%. There's these extra, I'm like, that doesn't exist. But that there was more you could do.
Yeah.
That sort of a thing. I even missed that. Before, when it was just magazines and
Nintendo Power.
Yeah. And that's
the book that came with the game.
Yeah. That's all you knew at that point. Now, you've got 50 Twitch streamers fighting each other. The day a game drops, I got to beat it, man.
Yeah.
I did a 20-hour stream.
Yeah. That's fine. That's fine for folks.
Yeah.
I've had enough experience watching other people play video games that I'm not going to sit and watch that on YouTube, because we had the experience of you only have so many controllers. Not every game is multiplayer.
Truth.
And if you're hanging out at a friend's house and that's what you're doing, there are going to be instances where you're not playing the game.
Yeah.
And sometimes I was okay with that if it was a hard game and I wasn't good at it. I was totally fine just watching. But yeah, I can't do that now. I'm not going to go on Twitch or anything like that. No.
Yeah.
If there's a game being played, I want to be part of it.
I agree. It's kind of crazy. I do have segments where I record and I do that, but I've never it's almost a twisted thought process, because there are people that follow Twitch streamers, and no hate to this.
Mm-hmm.
They watch it incessantly. And the people that are hosting it have to be hilarious or really entertaining on some level, because there is one entire channel that I saw that I was like, I'm not down with that. They literally pick one game, and that is a trend on Twitch, that they're really good at Metroid, and not just Metroid as an overall. I'm good at Metroid on Nintendo, and that's it. And they will do speedruns and variations and hacks, and now you can play as Luigi in the game, and so there's a lot of extra stuff they do, and I just don't get that. But evidently it's harder to be a variety streamer and play different types of games, because people will tune out.
Yeah.
And I've seen some of that too on YouTube, where people are like, what are you doing? I'm here because you did the thing. Do the thing again.